we added some yeast cell walls into the diets, and after inoculation of the birds, maybe 7 or 8 days after that inoculation, we did observe a reduction of probably 2 logarithms in Campylobacter colonization.
Welcome to the Poultry Podcast Show. Today I'm here with Munoz. Welcome to our show.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bowick. A pleasure to be here.
I'm super happy to chat with you today. There's a few topics that I think everyone is of interest because it involves foodborne pathogens and whatnot that are related to poultry. But first, I want to hear, how did you get into poultry?
So that's an interesting story. For my undergrad, I did some work related with food science, and I got a bachelor's in food science. But after I graduated back home in Honduras, I was able to find a job in animal sciences. So I was like a technical rep in sales for a company that produced and sold animal feed. So I was visiting a lot of clients, dairy producers, beef producers, pork, and also some of the clients had chickens, like broilers and layers, mostly was my experience down in Honduras. So after some years of doing that kind of work, I got immersed into the different live animal production operations. And when I was thinking about what did I wanted to do for my career, I honestly evaluated like the different animal species, and honestly, poultry seemed to be the fastest growing industry in my
Oh,
country,
yeah.
also here in the States. So I figured if I was coming to get a degree and higher education in the field, I would want to have more opportunities. So that's how I ended up deciding on poultry.
When it comes to raising healthy animals, you need more than the right solutions. You need the right partner who brings decades of industry expertise and a global team to put that knowledge to work for the advancement of your operation. At Phibro Animal Health Corporation, we are proud to work with you as your trusted partner.
That's really smart and very calculated. I like that.
Yes,
It's
I
it's good to pick a growing industry.
definitely. Took me a couple of years to make the decision, but I would make it again if I had the opportunity to choose again.
Good. Then you know you're in the right spot.
Definitely.
So can you tell us a little bit about the path to where you are right now? After you decided poultry, what did you do after that?
So once I decided I wanted to study poultry, I started like contacting different professors, and particularly here at Auburn, we had a professor that graduated from my same undergraduate school in Honduras, which is Zamorano. So I reached out to Dr. Wilmer Pacheco and just told him my interest and what I wanted to do. And at the time, he put me in contact with my current major professor, which is Dr. Ken Macklin. So once that we started talking, we both kind of like understood that had similar interest in what we wanted to do. I had interested in what he was doing. So we started talking from there, and thank God the door opened, and I was able to move up here to Auburn.
That's awesome. Um, with graduate school, a lot of it is just timing.
It is timing, and I think that you just gotta be patient for the opportunity because there is a lot of people that actually want to continue their degrees. So it's just a matter of trying and doing it insistently if
Yeah,
you want to achieve your objective.
yeah. Persistence definitely pays off.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about what you've been working on, or where your main interests lie as you pursue further education?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first got to Auburn, I got my master's degree, and it was in a different field of what Dr. Macklin did in the lab. But
Hmm.
given my background, that I used to work a lot with uh, animal feed, I was interested in knowing what was the bacterial contamination of
Mm-hmm.
different feed ingredients and also the animal feed in the production stage. So during my master's, I did like feed mill surveys around the state of Alabama. So we visited the feed mills and we collected samples of ingredient receiving or the stored ingredients, and also at different stages of the processing of the feed. And then with the samples, we brought them back to our lab and we were trying to find the bacterial load for pathogens that are normally important in humans that are transmitted through poultry. So we looked a lot at Clostridium, Salmonella, and also E. coli. And that was some of what I did for my master's degree. Once that I decided that I wanted to do a PhD, we had the opportunity to change a little bit the area where I was going to be doing my research. And for my PhD, I've been evaluating different intervention strategies that would be applied in the farm to
Mm-hmm.
successfully reduce or prevent colonization of foodborne pathogens, and more particularly in Campylobacter jejuni.
Yeah. So, with the transmission at the feed mill level, what were some of the main conclusions of the work that you did? Where is the hot spot?
Yes. So since we visited different types of feed mill, we noticed that the feed mills that used animal meals, it would
Mm,
be poultry byproduct meal, for example, or fish meals or any other ingredients like that, they tended to have higher contamination. In our study, we did not detect any salmonella, but we detect consistently E. coli and Clostridium perfringens along the feed. So I would say that the ingredient source that you're using really impacts like the pathogen load you're going to have in the feed. And also, we noticed that pelleting process, it was successful in some cases in reducing these enterobacteria, but we also noticed that some feed mills that they didn't have the best hygiene practices in their operations,
oh,
that they would have a either a recontamination of the feed, or the pelleting temperatures that they were using, they were not successful in killing these bacteria. So that's
that's so
something.
interesting.
Mhm.
So, when someone brings in a contaminated feed to the mill, if what are the proper cleaning practices that should be applied all the time? But I guess what are the main ones that would reduce the bacterial load if something happened to be positive? And then what, or a better question is what are the practices that allow recontamination? What are people doing wrong?
Well, I think I will start answering like the first part of the question you answered, because I think that it's very complicated just to deal
Yeah.
with the great amount of volume of grain and ingredients that you receive. So, given the nature that all these ingredients are coming from the field, you are likely going to have these bacteria. So, I
Yeah.
think that the proper way to address it is just having good hygiene at the feed mill and having in proper like places of rodent control or pest control, so you don't get like those hotspots. So routinely cleaning and disinfection of the equipment once a week, I think that would be efficient. Once that the feed is produced, if it's contaminated, I think that there's some strategies that you can do, like to add to the feed certain products that would decontaminate it, and that's something that I know that industry is doing to reduce this bacterial load.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So, the animal meals are, or the fish meals seem to be the main source of contamination. Is that something that you would say is consistent outside of where you are too? Or do you think that the temperatures where you are kind of help those bacteria persist? Do the cooler temperatures for feed mills north of you um, play any role, basically in having more or less contamination as the seasonality goes on?
Yeah, I would assume so. We did our study in both weather temperatures that we get here in Alabama, not
Yeah.
necessarily as a cold winter as y'all get over there,
Yeah.
but we did in the summer and also in the winter, and there was some variation. And I would think that the more like north you go, you are going to see different kind of problems. Especially, I think that you might see more contamination during the cooling process because you might get more condensation in some places compared to
Oh,
others,
sure.
given the temperature differential. But it definitely is something that needs to be seen regionally, I think.
Yeah. Huh.
But
Yeah, that's really interesting.
in terms of the ingredients, going back to that part of the question, I also think that yes, fish meal was one of them. But from what I can recall right now, I think that peanut meal as well was a contaminated ingredient. So it's just given the nature of like peanuts grow in the soil, and then soil is heavily like
Yeah.
contaminated with this type of bacteria.
Yeah. Huh. Gosh, the meals or the further processed products sound like they could be more risky.
Yes, yes. We didn't see as much contamination in DDGS, for example, or
Ah, yeah.
even in soybean meal, in corn.
Yeah. Yeah, so the intervention strategies, at least at the feed mill, involve cleaning and rodent control are kind of the big ideas. So, could you tell us a little bit about the intervention strategies that you could apply to the finished feed, or maybe in the feed as a preventative? Are there what kind of products are helpful for these different pathogens?
I know that sometimes formaldehyde might be added into the feed, just like at low doses to kill these bacteria, and that's been shown effective.
Is that common across um, feed mills, or does that require? I'm sure there's a cost associated with it and some special handling, but is it common? Is it a common practice?
I really don't know. I from
Yeah,
from what I saw, it is common, but I just had like limited perspective, like here from the
yeah,
state, so I wouldn't be able to speak like for the whole
yeah,
population of feed mills.
yeah, yeah. So, what are some of the other things that you're working on right now in terms of salmonella and Campylobacter control? Are they the same for both of those pathogens, or are they different? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so for salmonella, we are doing a more of a comprehensive study to understand where is salmonella getting in to the poultry continuum. So I'm part of projects where we go to broiler complexes and sample the pullets, the breeders, incubators, broiler farms, and even we go to the processing part to understand where is the salmonella actually getting into the poultry chain. And in terms of intervention strategies, I've been more familiarized with work in Campylobacter, which we have been evaluating yeast cell wall products added into the diet and also organic acids added into the water
Hmm.
to understand if they're able to reduce the colonization of Campylobacter in the live birds mostly.
Oh, yeah. So when you look at those two different pathogens, they they're commensal. You know, the bird doesn't really much care, but the human, the human definitely cares. So, from a food safety aspect, what are the important reasons to control it at all of those different stages of the chain? Have you realized that most of the contamination is coming from one of those places, or is it really several different steps?
So it is very tricky, I would say, because these bacteria can get in the chain at any given point. So they're bacteria that they are normally ubiquitous to the poultry environment, and as you mentioned, they're commensal bacteria that do not harm the bird. So I think that for salmonella, what we have learned and have seen in this project that I was talking about is that a lot of the contamination occurs at the hatchery, and we do see it in the broiler farms and then of course in the processing plant, but previous to the hatchery point we haven't observed as much. And with campylobacter it's just very tricky because um, it is believed that vertical transmission does not occur, but I think that once that the bacteria is in the farm, all the birds get contaminated. So it's very common that in Campylobacter, you don't see an in between. So I think that any step of the chain can be like the point where these bacteria are getting. But
Yeah.
I think that the biggest difference is that the behavior with Salmonella, for example, you can have prevalence of Salmonella in the live birds that are gonna be a good estimator for you to predict what are gonna be the prevalence level of salmonella at the processing plants. And with Campylobacter is different because there is no in between. So you might have a low prevalence at the flock levels, but you see high prevalence in the processing. And I think that all that has to do with the resistance that apparently Campylobacter has to the different interventions that we as industry have.
Mm. So what are some of the common interventions specifically for salmonella right now that are being used or are in development?
Okay, so you know that the government is very interested in having like chicken free of salmonella. So these interventions, and I think that this year they came up with a different plan of how to address it. So before we were looking at interventions at the processing plant to decrease salmonella prevalence and loads in the poultry meat, but now the approach is to view it like a farm to fork model. So you have to have interventions now in production and as well during transportation and also
Hmm.
at the processing. So I think that adding, starting from the feed, it needs to be addressed because any route where salmonella can get into the farm needs to be taken care of. So you would say adding products that would inhibit growth of salmonella in feed. You'd say cleaning properly the water lines to remove any biofilm that might be surviving that can help to spread salmonella within the birds, maximizing hygiene and biosecurity at the farms. And all these interventions added up are the ones that I I seem like and I read that are the ones mostly used.
Hmm. Do you have an idea of by the time the birds go to the slaughter facility itself, how many are actually contaminated, and then how many carcasses, get contaminated just because of maybe a few? Like, do you have an idea of the prevalence overall, like at the farm, and then versus what happens at slaughter?
Yes, I think it depends. I was reading a paper, and they were comparing the differences between the prevalence of salmonella in the farm and the prevalence of salmonella at the processing plant, and doing the
Yeah.
same thing with Campy. And they were observing that salmonella, for example, when you have it in high levels at the farm, you'd say a prevalence of 90%. You pretty much observe the same prevalence, 95%, at processing stages. But with Campylobacter, it was a little bit different because in some situations, you detected less Campylobacter at the farm. You'd say like a 60%, 67%. And then when you were at processing stages, you would detect like an 88, 89%. So it was not like
Oh.
kind of like a good estimator. But in general, I think that once that you start in the processing facility, you receive birds and you have a contamination, you'd say of 60, 80% of salmonella in the birds. As you go into the different processes in the poultry plant before or after chilling, you see like a significant decrease where you can even reduce like salmonella to numbers closer to zero. And then if
Yeah.
you start in the contamination levels around the 60% for Campylobacter, you don't end at that level. You, if you're lucky, you end like around the 40% contamination after chilling. So it seems like Campylobacter is a little bit more hard to kill with
Yeah.
uh, with the parasitic acids and
Ah.
mhm.
Is does it have a resistance? Do you think that's why, like, the agents that we use for intervention are not useful, or are they the wrong agents?
That's a good question, and I really don't know. And I think that that is something that we need to look more into because there is not much information up to date, like of Campylobacter, as there is with Salmonella. So
Yeah.
it could be just like a mechanism that the bacteria has, or it could be the wrong products that we're
Yeah.
using in the not in the proper stage.
Yeah.
So
So so as you're moving through a slaughter facility, it's so automated. The birds are on these shackles and they're going through. So when they get to that chilling process, does the method of chilling matter? I mean, does the air chilling versus the water bath, are there different amounts of salmonella mitigation? Because I guess I just think air chilling is much different than putting the carcasses like in a bath of water where maybe an agent could be applied. So are there differences based on the method of cooling the carcass with salmonella incidents?
I have not been involved with that type of research particularly,
Yeah.
but I would assume because you are keeping. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Like, oh, I don't know what happened. But yeah, I'm gonna try that one again. Um, I think that there is a difference between both uh, cooling systems. I think that when you do immersed chilling, you have water that is treated with antimicrobials that will reduce more the bacterial load.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting. And then can they get recontaminated after that?
Yes, definitely at any point, and uh, I think that what happened is that the meat that is further processed has more chance of um,
Yeah.
getting contaminated.
Yeah. Huh. Sounds like an uphill battle some days.
It, I think it's something hard to control,
Yeah. Yeah.
but definitely as an industry, we need to deal with it and try to find the solutions to produce safe meat.
Gosh, yeah. Yeah, so there are some chemical strategies like you mentioned, the low percentage of formaldehyde, and maybe even there are some temperature strategies with heating or cooling, or the feed gets processed and there's steam, or the carcass gets cooled and then there's antimicrobials in there. But are there for the production systems or the marketing strategies that don't allow antibiotics, are there non-antibiotic strategies for mitigation that are successful, or are they still kind of being developed?
I think that that is something that we still do a lot of research on, but there are certain products that have shown that they are able to reduce the contamination of animals with salmonella, particularly. And I know, like mononucleosaccharides, for example,
Ah,
when you add them into the diets, they're able to bind any salmonella that might be in the environment, and that translates into a prevention of colonization of the bird. So there's some studies that show, and I actually know that in layer industry, some supermarket chains actually require their producers, their table egg producers, to add these mononucleosaccharides into the diets because they reduce the colonization of salmonella and therefore uh, they produce cleaner eggs. So
yeah,
I think that that's something. And there's a lot of research that has shown that, at least in vitro, there is potential for organic acids to prevent or yeah prevent growth of Campylobacter. So I think that that has to be studied in a larger scale just to see if the in vitro applications are actually can be used in large production systems.
yeah, yeah. That's really interesting. When you look at the success of the different strategies, um, what is the focus of industry right now? Do they have a favorite mitigation strategy, or are people kind of choosing based on their operation?
I think it really will come down into each company how do they need to address it. I feel like maybe providing more incentives for growers to adopt one or the other would
Yeah,
would be more beneficial. But honestly, I think they choose based on what they see it's worked before. But a overall package needs to be like given to them and explain to them. I think to reduce this colonization.
yeah. So, has there been any big breakthroughs recently that seem kind of exciting that either you've done in the lab in your research or that you've read about? I mean, is there anything to kind of keep an outlook for, watch on the horizon with either of these pathogens?
Well, actually, I really got excited with some of the results we were observing in the trials we had because we added some yeast cell walls into the diets, and after inoculation of the birds, maybe 7 or 8 days after that inoculation, we did observe a reduction of probably 2 logarithms in Campylobacter colonization, which it was not statistically significant speaking about, but if you are able to reduce 2 logs in colonization in Campy, it can be translated to a massive reduction of public health cases. So
Yeah,
that only sustained for that first week after we inoculated the birds. So I think that likely if we test, because that is particular diet that we were testing had higher yeast cell wall inclusion, and then we were doing like a step down dose as the birds grew. So I think that if we tried and studied like what would happen keeping these levels of this product at higher numbers, if it could sustain this reduction, I think that that would be interesting. And
yeah,
in terms of the acids, I've read some papers that particularly using formic acid has been successful before. Unfortunately, the ones that we tried were not formic acid based, so we didn't see a great reduction in Campylobacter colonization. Matter of fact, it was similar levels as the birds that didn't have the acid in the water.
yeah. It's good to hear that some of these other strategies are providing other options, because if we only have one or two options for relying on these control strategies, I think that can become bad long term,
I
right?
I think that there's
The
opportunities. A lot of research needs to be done in vaccines. So far, vaccines haven't worked for Campylobacter,
Yeah,
but they have worked for Salmonella. So vaccines are always a way to control the farm. I
yeah,
think for Salmonella, and more research needs to be done for Campy to see if we come up with something similar.
yeah. Do you know why the vaccine strategies in Campylobacter have not been successful? Is it something about what's able to be targeted, or some other mechanism that bacteria has that outsmarts our technology?
Yeah, maybe it's just like the Campylobacter strains are different,
Mm,
and
yeah,
the difference you see in the organism. But that is something that is exciting and provides great opportunity for research, I think. And
yeah,
nowadays, with newer technologies that allow us to understand better the molecular, like the bacteria at the molecular level, I think that it's exciting.
yeah. Do you have a favorite strain of salmonella that you like to work with?
Honestly, we just I don't have a favorite one, but we do like non-adixic acid resistant strains. Yeah,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
yeah,
Sometimes when you work with salmonella or other pathogens long term, people just have a favorite for maybe because it's so hardy against a certain intervention, but it's always
yeah.
good to ask, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Are there any other things in this area that we've been talking about as far as transmission or mitigation strategies that we haven't touched on that you would like to make sure we do highlight?
I think that the most important thing is just always be aware that uh, a minimum breach in terms of biosecurity can put down all the effort. So it's just highlighting the importance of keeping like uh, the whole like barrier high at all moments. So
Yeah,
it's being constant about, and I understand that in industry, like growers have a lot of challenges, and definitely it's hard to keep up, but it's just like a thing where if you are not aware you can introduce these pathogens. So it's just a matter of keeping everything in check, I would say. Their cleaning, their disinfections, their uh, added products into the water or the feeds, and obviously if they required vaccinations in their operations, keeping all those to date.
yeah. Yeah, that's sage advice for sure, especially since you worked in the the sales side and also now on the developmental or the R&D side. So it's good experience to have while you're working on finishing PhD.
Yes, definitely.
So we'll wrap up the talk today by asking the 3 questions that we ask everybody.
It's time for our famous 3. Working with nature and not against it. Chickens fed AX3 Digest consume significantly less feed and water to produce 1 pound of meat. Successful flock performance is determined during the first 10 days post-placement. AX3 Digest is a highly digestible novel protein that most improved in barn performance, bird health, and a drier litter. For more information, visit www.protecta.com.
So the first question is do you have a favorite poultry-related resource?
Do I have a favorite poultry-related resource? I think that
Yes.
I've used a lot a book which describes the diseases of poultry, which that's the name of the book. So it's been a great resource for me to understand pathogenesis of the organisms and
Yeah.
the mechanisms they use. So I think that's one of my favorite ones.
Yeah. For the area that you're in, it's totally appropriate.
Yes.
The second question is do you have a favorite non-poultry related resource?
I do, not necessarily academically, but just for wisdom. I just love reading the Bible. So yeah, that's the one. And then if I want to read things for fun, I just go to Nerd Wallet and then see business things like where to invest, what's coming up,
Hey,
and stuff like
those are
that.
both great resources. The last question is, especially since you've already been in the industry and now you're coming back for some further education, what is your best advice for somebody to be successful in the poultry industry?
I think the poultry industry has like a particularity where it seems like it's a big industry, but at the end of the day, it's very small. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that everybody knows each other. So I think that the best thing you could do is show your interest when you go to meetings, meet people, ask them questions about what they do, network, and make those connections. Because even if you are in your first year of your degree and you see like, oh, I'm graduating until 5 years or 4 years from here, people remember you when you interact with them. So I think that the best way to do it is like making those connections and also just being genuine about it, showing like that you really want to learn and don't be afraid of asking questions because sometimes we don't ask questions because we don't feel like we don't want to be seen like we don't know these basic things. So it's just a matter of asking, and people is always willing to help you. So I think that is one of the key things that you need to do.
Well, thank you so much for that advice and for talking to us today about issues related to food safety. Love talking to people about this because it's not my wheelhouse, and so I always learn something.
Yeah, happy to be here and I appreciate the invitation.
You're welcome.